Vincent, got your card. You're staying at a hostel.
Yeah.
Started working at Vincent.
I started putting bearings in crankcases. And yeah, putting the bearings in the crankcases, and then I was honing the cylinders. Honing the cylinders? I was honing something. I had a gauge to use, and but I was putting a high driver gear and a high driver gear and a lay shaft gear. There was 2 gears you put in there, and then I passed it on to the next people, and they put the rest of the gearbox in. And one time I was looking under my bench, and there was a box full of gears in there. And I asked a guy, I says, "What's these?" He says, "Them's Duff." "What do you mean Duff?" He says, "They don't fit." I said, "They gotta fit. They're goddamn brand new. If they don't fit, that means that the drawings are off. The plus and minus on the drawings have got to be off." I said, "I'm not working on anything else today but these gears." And I put that son of a bitch up on the bench, and I set all the one gear in one row and the other gear in another row, and I fit about half of them. I went through and found them that would work. And then I went and got some valve grinding paste and a rawhide mallet, and I made every one of them work. Then I went over, I kept one pair that didn't fit, and I went over to the drawing office and said, "Hey, you guys, you got to mallet it with your plus and minus on the drawing on this son of a bitch." He says, "Fuck off, Yank." That's okay. I took my gears back over and beat that one till it worked and passed them on.
Oh, that's good. So aside from that, how was the Vincent factory? What do you remember about it?
It was, well, the old factory was really old. It was a stagecoach station in 14 or 1600 or some goddamn something. Mm-hmm. And today there's still a plaque that says that this is a place that was. But anyway, that heat treat was in there, and the den room, they had a Heenan and Frau dynamometer they'd run the machines on. And William's dad ran that section, and he ran all the tests on the bikes. And the little cafe was in there that you could get a cup of tea and a goddamn something. Not much. And they had, originally all the stuff was made there. I mean, it was, they did everything in there. And then the road test was out of there. And then I got sent over to the new factory, which was about half a mile. And George Brown's business was just across the street. And but anyway, I worked at the new factory, and remind me when we're at the shop, and I'll show you a photo. I've got some photographs of it. I got a photograph that shows Vincent's Bristol. He had a Bristol car, which was pretty plush. Like about equal to a XK Jag or something, Pretty streamlined and pretty nice.
All that stuff is in the showcase, for the most part?
All of it what?
What you're talking about, that picture? That stuff is in the showcases under the counter?
Some of it, yeah.
Okay.
And some of it's on a computer.
Okay.
So I don't, I know where it is on a computer.
We need to go through that showcase.
And Yeah,
So then you went to work at the new factory.
yeah, I worked in there, and well, that's when I was doing the wheels and that stuff, and then what the hell? There was some other thing. Oh, I know what it was. When you're assembling a Vincent, you put the gears in, and then you put the steady plate on that, because they were stuck in on little shafts. So there was a steady plate that tied them all together. Well, when you put all that in and tighten the bolts up to a torque spec, then it's supposed to be free to turn the gears. Well, a lot of times it wasn't free, so then you had to pull that plate off and put little shims in there to give them a little clearance.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they would be too loose. You'd have to take the plate off and put a shim in so that it would be, well, this goddamn guy, great old big guy, Englishman, if it needs some shims, he would just reach up with his brass mallet and whack the shaft and knock it in, take the slack out. But he bowed the plate when he did that. I told him, man, that's horse shit, you shouldn't do that. He says, piss off, Yank, or I'll bat you in the face with this mallet. I thought, okay, tough enough. So I never did report him, but I probably should have. But every time I have to overhaul a Vincent, I find the goddamn pins loose in there. It pisses me off. But I know exactly why it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of difference between the instructions and the following. But yeah, I worked all the way through that, and then the last 2 months that I worked at Vincent's, they had one guy in the lightning shop, and the lightning shop was not quite as big as this room, about 3/4, but square. It was wider this way, and so it was a little square room. So I went in there, and the guy had been working on a lightning for 6 or 7 months, and he had it about half done. And in 30 days, we finished that lightning, and then I told him, you just let me build this son of a bitch, and you don't do much. And so I went around to heat treat and got all the pieces, got that.
All right, countershaft sprocket looked like a gun barrel.
Okay, yeah, the sprocket that looked like a gun barrel, and you hit it and ring like a bell. Everything, and I went through all the parts and found the ones that were the neatest or the best. And we built that motorcycle for the Earls Court Show in 1 month. And I was on a stand at Earls Court to represent Vincent's for 2 weeks, 10 days or whatever this show was for. And that motorcycle was there 3 feet away. I could easily got to, when I was working on it, didn't have any numbers on it yet. They didn't put the numbers on until they were finished. So I didn't know what the engine number was, so I had no way to identify it. Well, 50 years later, I found out off the internet that that motorcycle that I made was the one that went to New Zealand and set the world record in 1973 or 4 or 5, 1975 I guess, and it went 185.15 miles an hour.
Wow. 20 some odd years after you built it.
No, it did that quite soon after, well, 3 or 4 years after I built it.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't find it out for 25 years. It took all that time for it to come up. I found it off the internet that bike was the one that set the record, and that was the last. They only built 25 Lightnings, 25. there was famous motorcycles, but they didn't make very many. And
So you built the last Lightning that Vincent made.
Yep.
I never heard that before.
Well, we never talked about that before.
You've always got such a good answer for everything.
Well, it's a true answer.
No, that's an amazing fact, though. You know. Do you remember was it stamped 25 or was it? You remember the it would have been an FA or something, right? The number on it.
The engine number, I probably got it written someplace, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
But regardless, it was the one that set the record in New Zealand, and the guy brought it to Bonneville when, in '56, when NSU had hired Bonneville. They brought it there, and they let him run it a little bit, but they wouldn't let him use their timing mechanism. They had their own stuff, and so they didn't get a chance to do anything more with it. And so they sold that to the guy that was the Vincent distributor for the United States, Harry Belleville in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And he had it for a while. And it's some places around. I think, the guy in Texas owns it now. As soon as the guy died, he run right over and yanced it off his widow or something.
Yeah. So then you got done working at the Vincent factory. What made you leave? Just was time to go back home?
What made me leave was goddamn snow. I'm riding up and down the Great North Road in the snow and slipping and sliding all over. And I said, to hell with this, man. I came here and it's warm and it ain't warm anymore and I'm leaving. How can you do that, Yank? I said, well, I worked my way here, I'm going to work my way away. And that's when I went to my landlady in London, and I told her, hey, I got no money, but if you let me put my motorcycle in your backyard and cover it with a piece of canvas, I'll get a job, and let me sleep on the couch in the living room, and give me one meal a day. I'll find a job, and as soon as I find a job, the first payday I'll pay you. She said, I'll be fine. And I did that. And I went on this ship as an oiler, $400 a month, which was very pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a couple of trips to Kuwait and the Persian Gulf and brought oil back to Hisham in England. And then we made another trip to Kuwait and came into where the hell did we come to? We were in Europe, in Belgium, I think. Wherever it was in Europe. And we went in there, and I found out that they were having motorcycle races at Zandvoort, which was 100 miles away. And I told the chief engineer, who liked race cars, and him and the port engineer was off over the bar drinking, and I said, hey, they're having this race at Zandvoort. And he says, I don't give a damn thing about motorcycles. And I says, people drive cars to motorcycles. I says, let's go. You'll probably see people bring Ferraris and Porsche and stuff like that. And we did, and we did it. I got some pictures of them. I still got some pictures of them. So we went and did that. And then we drove back to it's about 125 miles or something. Anyway, we drove back to the bar they was hanging out in, and a guy come running in, oh, Chief, the new engineer come aboard, and he got a draw and went ashore and got drunk and left Paddy Irish with the boiler. And Paddy let it run out of steam. So they looked, in the fantail was a 500-gallon tank, supposed to have diesel in it. The tank was there, no diesel, wouldn't run on air. So we had to go on a ship and break up furniture and boxes and whatever we could to get enough heat, to get enough steam to open the steam valve. And then we got the thing running. It should have taken 3 or 4 hours. Well, it took all bloody night. The goddamn oil pump crapped out. We had to overhaul that, and something else happened. And pretty soon it was 9 or 10 o'clock the next morning, and I told them, man, I'm leaving. They got it coming back up. So
Hang on.